there is a Q&A session, so feel free to ask questions.
Professor Jung, thank you for a very informative presentation. A question on functional safety, because you mentioned about it. What are the characteristics that you see are important for an engineer working in the area of functional safety? Mm-hmm. Do you think that he must know programming, or must he have some background information, or do you see it as a very homogeneous field where a lot of different backgrounds of engineers could work together? What is your view on that?
Of course, this is a bit a difficult question because it's spread very far and wide, this question. I've been involved in functional safety for about 20 years now. And when I worked in industry, then there were many people acting in different kinds of development of this functional safety. We have the system architects, we have the project managers, we have the hardware engineers, the software engineers, and of course the testers, and those that do the documentation and the certification. And everybody is important. Everybody on his place. And this is one thing, the whole thing can only work if everybody is doing his job good. So we have, chances for everybody. And you can come into that business, and as more as you have in the mechanical engineering, the better you can see what difficulties there are in the functional safety. Well, you have to know how this complete architecture is built up. And if you see what is the function, only then you can imagine what can go wrong. So there are systematics, you can learn how to do some failure analysis and see what can happen. And then you must see what is the level you want to achieve, and you take the measures.
So you mentioned these standards that are under development for functional safety and for intended functionality. How does ethics come into play there? And I'm thinking of the Moral Machine project of the MIT. Because moral is very differently defined in every country, in every culture, in every demographic group. So how are these intended to be baked into this intended functionality? Because ethical behavior of autonomous vehicles is somewhat also functionality of these assistance systems.
This is very interesting, and it is very severe, but this is tight, very close to the legal discussion. Because ethics is one point, and legal is the one you may get punished if something goes wrong. Ethics must be discussed, but it can't go directly into these into the algorithms. Maybe you have heard of the Ethics Commission that has been set into commission about 2 years ago. It worked for about 9 months, and there was a 20-sheet paper that gave us some handy ideas to go into that direction. And to my belief, you should take this result seriously and take this maybe into all of your work. But this will not be easy, because there are the economic pressures maybe in the development. And of course, there are the legal cases. So we have to stick directly to the legal character, and this will take into account usually all ethics questions after a few time. And you mentioned that also it's a matter of culture. So if we talk about that in Germany, we will have different results. When we talk in USA, in Japan, or the Far East somewhere, we will probably have different results.
So for Europe, that's an interesting case of hopefully having unified law over the EU but still having different ethics in every country or even in every region.
That's it.
And it somewhat also implies kind of a regional version of each code, because of course you have to comply with certain regulations, not only for road safety, but also have this moral aspect. And
That's it.
That's it. And there are some interesting cases from this study Rolf just mentioned that has been heavily discussed, that when you have to decide between a 3-year-old child and an 80-year-old woman, how do you decide? What do you think?
That was actually part of the Moral Machine project. And their finding was that it is vastly different between, for example, Asian countries who would always protect the elderly compared to, who would always protect the elderly compared to Western and US, America countries, who will always protect the younger ones. So that is exactly this legal differentiation.
Absolutely. So this discussion also came in this report Rolf just mentioned, and there are also cases. So when you're a victim of such an autonomous driving accident, then you definitely are against it. However, if you look at the bigger picture, if Rolf mentioned that there's 3,500 people dying in Germany, and with the application of autonomous vehicle, the idea is to reduce this number. When in a pure number you can reduce death in the street, you should go for it. But again, from the victim's perspective, that's not okay. Once you're, even if it's 500, as long as you're the victim, you're never going to. So ethical issue is a thing that's just hard to imagine on. On that note, I want to welcome the new panelist, the next speaker. Mario, why don't you join the talk a little bit? You have a very
maybe I'll take this one.
Radical standpoint on these issues. So what do you think?
But on this issue, not a really radical one.
Sure.
I was always wondering why should you put that burden on a software developer? I would just throw dices.
I fully agree with you. Here is my point. Here's my point, Mario. Thank you for bringing it up. If the surgeon, the open heart surgeon, has to take the liability of making a mistake, he will never go to the operation room. So if you give the liability to the software developer, we will make mistakes. There is no way he will be programming, right? I mean, this is a good point, Rolf.
Maybe let me jump in here. So I mean, you can definitely not make the point that the developer can do whatever the developer wants to do.
That's
so the
not the point.
Developer has a responsibility. Plus, the interesting thing with the question is that we can only decide about it because technology enables us to decide about it. Because what happens now was someone is driving and the someone is deciding with the head, and the someone is as fast or as slow as the someone can be. So it's non-deterministic. At least we cannot know how the determinism works there. With the autonomous car, we know it because we programmed it, we created it, and this is the dimension that makes the problem interesting, because no one cares. I mean, if I'm driving and I hit either the 81-year-old woman or the 3-year-old other person, well, I mean, then I just took a decision, no one cares about it. But with the other thing, it's that someone before being in the situation would have had to think about it and would have had to decide about what will happen there. And I mean, your algorithm might exactly be what happens in my head in that moment in the end. So it's just a random decision.
No,
yes.
not exactly. Because as long as it is deterministic, I agree. But as I mentioned, the artificial intelligence, we don't know what will happen. It's non-deterministic.
But in the brain, we also don't know.
It's probable.
Right.
And so therefore, it's like...
That's it, yeah.
And also, like, I mean, it's not that we don't know what happens in the machine learning. I mean, we can exactly explain every step, but the problem is it's probabilistic.
It's probabilistic. It's actually even more complicated. Probabilistic. With probability, you can check the functional safety part. But when it comes to an external attack, that's not probabilistic anymore. That is absolutely unforeseeable. When someone will attack, what is the probability of attack? This is where you cannot even put any maths anymore.
That's right.
Right. So this takes the problem to another.
And also indeed opens another dimension, because I mean for this security direction, I mean there it's probably unquestioned that we should provide the highest security level that we can provide to prevent such things. And so I think it's two dimensions, but it's also good that you mention it, because it's another thing that comes in with these always interconnected entities that are not only like the car connecting with an infrastructure or with other cars, but also the control units within the car communicating with each other, probably coming from different vendors. And so today we still have like manufacturers that are creating these cars, and they hopefully checked them to a certain extent. Maybe in the future we'll have also something more modular in that thing, or we have software updates, which is also a very interesting aspect. So there's also something that didn't start too long ago. People started putting software updates into cars and into control units and so on. And it's not even happening with everything right now, but it's of course very attractive for developers, because then they can fix it once it's shipped. And so this is also an interesting development. And the more we put the things into the let me also bring this dimension. So the interesting thing is also, we'll think 10 years back. So back then, software development happened inside this computer. So the worst thing you could harm was like inside your screen. And so now we bring these multi-ton cars or robots in manufacturing or whatever, and they are controlled by software. So we have these cyber physical systems. And so this is interesting, because it's not depending on the physics anymore, but on what we programmed into the code.
A quick question, sorry. After my 5 hours drive from Frankfurt to Munich, I lost track a little. So have we agreed that we throw dices, or what happened?
So any other question on that? Yes.
Can I have a yes or no on that?
No. Looking back to the ethical commission, it's nearly to throwing dice. Yes.
Nearly to throwing
you
dice.
Don't have to put an algorithm into the car that decides where to drive. Yeah. Which one? This is what you said is not according to the Eastern part, the Eastern decision, Eastern culture. It's like it is here. So no decision may be taken. You may not include an algorithm that decides anyhow. Yeah. To weigh one.
Moving to the next question for the interest of time.
I have many questions, but I want to choose 2 or 3.
Yes.
Try to keep it short. So first is the trust issue on car technology. In today's car, which you can buy today in an agency, you can have automatic braking. And once it's automatic, it's autonomous. And that's it. And it is not, we should not wait for the question if sometime in future this fully autonomy comes into our car. It's there today, you can buy it. And there has been one accident, luckily without that, in petrol ring in Munich with the BMW. I think my question now is, what is your opinion about German OEMs being transparent in sharing videos of their situation, like in Tesla case? We have the videos, we have the photos, we have reports of the accident inspection in aftermath. Will it be happening in Germany to build customer trust? This is my first question.
Maybe,
you want to take that?
Maybe one step back. Because of the definition of your question, the EBA, the emergency brake assist, is not fully autonomous. It's only one ADAS function. Fully autonomous means steering, accelerating, and braking. Braking is just one
what
part.
I mean is it overrides the driver. This is the point.
It overrides, yes. Mm-hmm.
It overrides the driver. So if I may intervene, automated emergency brake in a pure number, I would bet it has saved more lives than it has caused any problem. Sure. There's no doubt about it. Now your question with regard to German OEMs being transparent, in terms of functional safety, with all my experiences so far at Rolf and all my colleagues can validate that, I haven't seen any other OEMs in the world taking functional safety that seriously. You know, I would bet that we're at the highest level taking functional safety seriously. And the culture that we have in Germany, we have built it over a long period. I don't want to mention any other non-German OEMs. People, if they think that they can do that in 2 years, it's It's difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's difficult. So I'm really proud of the safety culture that we have in Germany. And I cannot comment on any particular incidents or any OEM, but I think that answers the question. Do you want to add anything to that, or agree, disagree?
Yeah, German council.
Another question is, I think some misperceptions around new technologies, new mechanisms around development cycles, like over-the-air updates. For instance, expecting software developers rely on fixing some errors over the air. I think this mustn't be a valid argument. What do you think about? I heard something like that.
I really like your questions. These are really stimulating questions. Who wants to take that?
No, I would like to answer if possible, because this is one part of functional safety. You have to work according to a special life cycle model. So you have requirements, you have the architecture, you have the implementation, you have the testing. You have several kinds of several levels of testing, and these have to be done very thoroughly. And for each function you applied. And if you do the over-the-air updates, then can you do all the validation tests? And validation means in the tests in the real car. Can you do that in that specific car? Because every car has little other features. And this is quite complicated. So we need to have some test cycle on the car itself. You can do complete testing of the algorithm that you send over the air. This is possible. Just the testing on module side and unit side, but you have to do some integration.
Right.
All the functions and algorithms in there work together with other machines, with other units, with other control units. And you can do that often on the site of the manufacturer.
And if I may add to this, over-the-air update is necessary because of security. Because when you ship the software in a car, the lifespan of a car is not like a cell phone. No, it's not 3 years. It's about 20 years. So a lot of new vulnerability will come in. And there is no way you can fix this without, of course you can. I mean, you can bring it to the garage, but if you want to ship a very, very quick patch, over-the-air update is necessary. But the problem that Rolf just mentioned, in terms of safety, once you put something new, that code is not certified anymore. How do you do that? One solution is to build a testing system inside the vehicle. So that is a problem that I think we'll have to deal with in the future. I do not have a clear solution to that.
So I like this aspect, because to put it in other words, it's like every car could be different. And that means you cannot test, you might not be able to test it in advance. Interesting challenge. The reason why I put this example, I mean, it was by purpose exaggerated, is I was just reading 2 weeks ago that in the game creation industry, it seems to be normal that they sell a game and then you get a DVD or something and it's not even working, and then afterwards you just get the update and then the game is working. Okay, this is a game industry, so this is not life-threatening. But then when you think a little further, this 737 MAX airplane, so this was also certified. I mean, it was not certified in Germany, but it is still like supposed to be the most critical certification process. And so these two thoughts. Next thought, you gain in the market when you're the first one to provide a product. So I mean, Tesla was showing us that. And the bad thing about it is that it gives you a strong incentive to publish early, or like, how to name it different, to release early. And then when you have this over-the-air update functionality, you might be tempted to not having thoroughly tested the things. And therefore, again, like thinking about, okay, if you're in the position to decide about such systems, force the people to test it before, because it's life-threatening again. So this was just a little sort.
I'm not against.
Can you please take the mic, and because of the live stream?
I'm not questioning over-the-air methods. Just questioning the understanding of understanding propagated to developers? Should they be relying on it, or this was the point?
I got that. Yeah. So I hope that your assumption that it's not used for life critical functionality, that this will be true for a long time. The other things I expressed was just I fear that there might also be strong incentives not to take it that critical anymore in the future. And coming back to what I said at the total beginning, so we as a society and as legislative, as people doing the law then, or like as people voting, the people who do the laws, we should make clear to them that we rather want to pay more or have stronger laws instead of saving some money and therefore risking the safety of people. Because at the end, we're the customers, so we decide. I mean, if some manufacturer sells us an electric vehicle for 5,000 euros less and it's less safe, then the market will decide. And so, but the market can only decide within the law. And so therefore, we have to make sure that the law is strict enough so that it's not happening, and that also not people from the outside are coming in and then providing the products here that are not fulfilling the safety requirements, like you have it sometimes with electronic products that come from China, for instance, that have then a similar symbol that is meaning something different.
So one last question.
Yeah, I would like to add one point. Maybe there could be something, because we were talking about testing on the car, which we can do. We can't do that. It could be some sort of swarm testing, maybe. That cars and several cars test themselves vice versa. Yeah. So that means that we need a manifold, a big manifold of different software kinds of software. Absolutely. So we need many manufacturers and they test each other. Could be
as you can see, there room for innovation here. So we'll take one last question before we move to the next. Oh yeah, all right. We'll take both. Yeah.
So my question is to you. You mentioned about Boeing 737 MAX. Now, as a software developer who is working in automotive industry or working with self-driving cars, what would you suggest to him or her on ethics that they should keep in mind so that things like Boeing 737 MAX don't happen with cars?
So there, what I would say there is that the certification authorities should have done a better job, because it turns out that
certification authorities is a separate thing, but like somebody was talking about that throwing the dice or keeping that responsibility on the software developer. That's not always possible, because a software developer working in India would think differently than a software developer working in Germany, and that's not the way things should be. Should there be some guidelines for software developers on that?
Problem. I don't think that was a software engineering problem. That was as Mark rightly said, that was the process of the certification and the entire process.
So I think process is the answer. Yes. So we need a process, because the problem is also, as we have modularization, the one who creates the single module doesn't see the whole thing. And the one who sees the whole thing is often not the technical expert. And this...
Yeah, so to give you all, follow processes. That's it. One last question very quickly, and then we'll move to the next speaker. Yes.
When you mentioned the levels of autonomous driving cars, there was level 3 right in the middle. And there are some movements that say you should skip level 3 because you cannot guarantee at every time that the car will have enough time to hand it safely over to the driver. Do you think there is a way to hand over safely to the driver in any case, or do you also think you should go directly to level 4?
I think no. Please. Yeah, I think no.
Yeah. I would have intended to say no too, but we have to be political. So there's a political question. No, it may be not possible. And there are even models that don't support this 6-level model, but only a 3-level model. There may be only one driverless, completely driverless and complete driver, and maybe one in the middle that's about the one thing we have right now, the level 2, and nothing else, and then skip. So these are models that are preferred in the Far East, for example.
The real problem is, we know it from avionic industry, is in level 3, because oftentimes the fatalities in the avionic industry is due to the fact that the pilot was not sure if the plane is in the autopilot mode or he has to do something.
In this podcast show, we bring in the industry leaders and experts in the automotive domain to share their experiences along their journey. The mission of our podcast is to start a dialogue that will allow us to understand the development of automotive industry and where the automotive industry is going. You can ask questions to our guests directly. Just send us an email to podcast@matrix.de. We'll schedule a call with you during the recording and you'll be part of our show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any new episodes. Please share this video to help others get enlightened as well, and that would mean a great deal to us. See you in the next episode.